Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the planet. My name is Nim Grinvald, technical evangelist here at Kintone. Joining me today are Genji and Will from our Kintone developer program and Christine from Be My Apps. I'm going to turn it over to Christine at this time to kick us off.
Thanks. Hi, welcome to the Build a Pictorial Stack Chart Data Project Workshop. I'm Christine Chin. I'm a project manager with Be My App, and I've been partnering with Kintone for these meetups, and I'd like to introduce you to the team. So combined, they do have 20 years of coding experience. Will, as Nim said, Will and Genji are in Tokyo. Nim is in California, and I am actually in Portland, Oregon. Will and Genji run the Kintone developer program and Nim is a Kintone evangelist promoting teamwork and low-code solutions. They're all here today to give back and help out the next generation of coders. Nim will be the speaker for tonight's workshop, and Will and Genji and I will be answering any questions you have, so feel free to post them in the chat section throughout the event. And lastly, I want to let you know that we actually have 2 opportunities for you to win or to be entered into a raffle. So we have 2 $100 Amazon gift cards that we'll be giving out tonight. The first one will be taken mid-event. We'll be doing a drawing then. So if you're in attendance, we will randomly select a winner and announce at the end of the meetup. And then we also have a second opportunity for another $100 Amazon gift card. So at the end of the event, we would like you to take our post-event survey. By taking the post-event survey, you'll automatically be entered into the raffle. And we will select that raffle winner tomorrow, and we will let you know if you're the winner of the second $100 Amazon gift card. And with that, I will let Nim take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Christine. All right, so it looks like we've got a few people on the line with us today. Dana and Sue, I want to just say thanks for joining us. First of all, if you have not already downloaded the code and the slide deck, at this URL, bit.ly/KDP_picked, KDP and picked all uppercase, it's case sensitive, and go ahead and download the code and slide deck over there and download the zip file that's got all of that wrapped up. If you have not yet signed up for a Kintone developer program account, please go ahead and do that. And a developer license as well. A free developer license is required for you to participate today. So just make sure that you've signed up for all of those things. And then you can always post in the chat if you have any questions. And especially if we're going to be debugging your code or if something's not working the way that you expect, just make sure you include your inputs and your outputs as well. So to go ahead and download the files, once you've clicked on that bit.ly link, you'll be taken to a GitHub gist page. You can download the zip file at the top right, in that place where it says download zip. You can also download each item individually, scroll down to download them. And to sign up for a Kintone developer account, if you've not done that already, just make sure you are not using Safari. Chrome works, Firefox works, and make sure you've set the cookies to be accepted. That way, when you sign up for the developer program, the form will work the way that we're expecting. And then signing up for a developer license as well, you can get a free Kintone developer environment by signing up at this link. Again, this is going to be required in order for you to fully get the most out of this, out of the work that we do today, because we will be doing a whole bunch of work on Kintone. And let's talk about how to build pictorial stack charts with no servers. A little bit about us. So as we mentioned, Genji and Will, can you guys wave your hands? Say hello. Hey there. They run our developer program, and they hail from the great city of Tokyo, Japan. As for me, I am Kintone's technical evangelist. And it's a very interesting role. What I do is I help people discover what's possible with our platform and see if it'll help them solve the problems that's keeping them up at night. So for those of you who are studying to be software engineers or who are looking to make a change in their career, one of the things that I like to talk about is my background, because I started by going through a coding boot camp, and then I got a role in Kintone first as a sales engineer. A sales engineer is the person who you speak to if you want to buy software, and you call up the company, you tell them about what you're looking for, and if your needs are sophisticated enough, they tell you, okay, we'll put you on the phone with our technical expert who will help see if this tool is the right solution for you. That's a sales engineer. It's also known by a variety of other names, and I was that guy. It's a lot of fun. It's a great role. I was promoted as the lead sales engineer, and then I ended up managing the sales engineering team before I shifted into this role as a technical evangelist. I share this with you so that you know, if you're interested in a different tech career than just simply being a software engineer, that these other roles are available to you. And I'm happy to talk about them so that, again, you can see what's possible out there in the tech world. If software engineer is, you're not 100% fit for that. Today's workshop, we've got two objectives. First, we're going to build a visualization project together using Kintone. And the intention is that everybody's going to walk away with a project that they can work on. Okay? So if you are a front-end developer who you want to spend less time setting up your back-end infrastructure, you want to concentrate on the interface, or if you want to concentrate on solving problems for customers around their day-to-day operations, then this workshop is for you. And there are 4 parts of today's agenda. First, we're going to talk about the big picture. We're going to talk about data analytics from a big picture. We're going to talk about what kind of difference Kintone makes in that environment. And then we'll create a Kintone app. We will show you how to display amCharts on Kintone and talk about calling REST APIs from Kintone. The intention is you will have a solid understanding of the role of data analytics in and around organizations. You'll be able to use Kintone to build data visualization. You'll import some code and get comfortable with coding on the platform, and then you'll learn how to pipe data onto Kintone so that you've got all of the foundations to have a really great project and a go live demo. Let's get started with the big picture. So, whatever background you come from, there's this notion of data analytics as mainly around 3 things. One is, making data look pretty, understanding the data easily, generating actionable insights. These are things that everybody agrees that we want our data analytics to do in order to be useful. But there's typically one piece of this puzzle that's not really well articulated, and it lives in the background as just something that impacts the effectiveness of a data visualization or a data analytics project. But we want to pull it forward into from being a background assumption actually being something that matters. And that's about sharing the insights. Let's say a little bit more about that. So, typically your documents, your data, the information that you have is spread over many different kinds of tools that you're currently using. And the issue is you've got the data and the conversations about the data, and they're spread out in a lot of different places. So, what ends up happening is information is not being shared effectively. You've got data that's scattered. You've got communication that's scattered. And both of them together being scattered puts a lot of overhead on finding the right thing, giving it to the right person at the right time, or as early as possible so that it can make the maximum amount of difference. This is where Kintone really comes in and makes the big difference, is it puts in the same place the data and the conversations about the data. So let me talk briefly about Kintone. Kintone's a no-code, low-code platform. It enables teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. You know, typically in organizations where you've got data living in a whole bunch of different places, you're dealing with not getting the information to the person, to the important people in a timely enough manner. You might be dealing with different versions of the same file being passed around, and it's not clear what the latest version of the file is. There are all sorts of roadblocks that make the sharing of information an experience that's full of friction, versus to have everything piped into one place where there's room to talk about it. It's the same thing with conversations. Communicating, you might end up, typically a person's got like, easily 7 to 10 different channels that they could be working in. Email, text message, phone, voicemail, Slack, any one of a number of places where you could be talking about, or you could be having important conversations. And what Kintone does is it lets you bake in those conversations right there where the data is. And what's possible now is having one screen, one place where you can keep the conversation alive right there where the data is. And this also has an impact on the way workflows happen in the day-to-day operations of moving items from one person to another and to complete a deliverable. You can now loop the right people at the right time in, which means you're talking about, collaborating at a highly effective way. You've got the right people seeing the right things at the right time. So perhaps like expense reports, document reviews, hiring processes. If you've got large projects that need data insights, that those insights are percolating in the way that you expect them to by default, but then don't actually really think about very much. To think about the kind of friction a typical experience of sharing data insights would look like. With Kintone, you can also control the data. You can make sure that the right people are seeing the right things, and that only the right people are seeing the right things. At a user level, at a departmental level, that by record or by what we call apps or by fields, that you've got the right kind of granular permissions. And then what that allows for on this kind of a no-code and low-code platform is that everybody can contribute. If you are not technical, you can spin up the kind of tools that you need to manage your data insights. If you are technical and you're comfortable with JavaScript, you can enhance these tools by building something custom out for your specific needs. Over here on this slide, we're talking about apps, and I want to drill down a little bit into what we mean by apps on Kintone. The main building block in Kintone is an app. You can imagine it as a spreadsheet in an Excel workbook. You can imagine it as a table in a database. It's a place where data is stored in records. And this is one of the coolest parts about Kintone is you can build an app even if you're allergic to technology by using our drag and drop interface. And apps are completely and extensively customizable with client-side JavaScript. So why am I telling you all of this about Kintone? I have a specific purpose for doing that. And that's about fulfilling and that purpose is to enable you to have a holistic view of what's needed in order to fulfill the promise of data analytics. You are going to do some work to get meaningful insights about the data. And what's important is that those insights become operationalized quickly. And so we talk about all of these roadblocks that get in the way. What happens is when you've got the data in one place, the communication in one place, that means you've got quick insights from there, and then you can take action quickly, which is really the whole point from soup to nuts. So how do developers contribute over here? Well, Kintone gives developers two kind of core opportunities to play around, get their feet wet, and even create opportunities to make some money. And one is to support a Kintone implementation and create it as a command center. So this might be where you create a custom look and feel, or you're piping data in from various other third-party web applications onto Kintone and using Kintone as essentially like a presentation layer or a collaboration layer for these kind of day-to-day operations. And the second way is enhancement. So that might be building and sharing extensions and selling extensions in a marketplace, or it might be developing JavaScript customizations that clients might want, and solving some of their core problems that your data analytics work has driven up to the surface. So let's break that down a little bit. When I talk about creating a custom look and feel, I mean you can display the data any way you want on Kintone with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. On the left-hand side, we've got an example of a bubble cloud, where each one of these bubbles is a different record, and the size of the bubble indicates the magnitude of a particular number in the record. The bigger the bubble, the bigger the number. And on the right, just to underscore how custom you can make something, we've got like a fully run implementation of Space Invaders running inside of Kintone, just to give you a sense of like anything really is possible, whatever you want to build. What about integrating with third-party web applications? Well, you can have all of the platforms talk to Kintone. Kintone makes available an open and free REST API. You can create, read, update, delete data, all of your typical CRUD operations between Kintone and any other apps. And Kintone can also push data into other apps based on triggers that have people use that users kick off in the platform. Does that via outbound webhooks that get passed to an external server URL whenever records are created, updated, deleted, whether they're moved along in a workflow or they're commented on. So that enables you to do some really cool things like identify some core insight that can be operationalized, and then to create it very quickly, and then to hook into some other third-party tool to pass data into that tool and continue a pipeline from tool to tool. There's also ways to integrate with third parties securely with the API tokens, for example, that can be generated to grant access to each Kintone app and giving the third-party tool the right degree of permissions. As for enhancements, you can create custom coding solutions and then wrap them in a package that allows business users and non-coders to install and configure your enhancement by themselves. Now, if you're looking for Kintone as a tool to enhance your own learning, it's great for experimenting JavaScript, for contributing your learnings to tech blogs, to share your projects with the community. It's all low-hanging fruit for how to use Kintone if you're learning. If you're looking to create some revenue, you can create and sell Kintone extensions. You can consult with firms on achieving business goals. This is especially powerful, again, paired with data analytics, because you can work with them to identify, what are the core insights that need to be made actionable, and then work with them to implement it, as well as developing custom Kintone implementations for customers. So this is the big picture of the traditional view of data analytics, what that traditional view misses, what Kintone, which is one of the tools that we're going to talk about today, what it can provide to narrow and close that gap, and how it might be relevant to you in whatever it is that you're doing. Now, all of this is related to building projects with no servers, because Kintone can essentially become your server running your database. And it lets you create your databases with an already existing graphical user interface, an already existing GUI. And then it can also allow you to concentrate on your front end work. So we're gonna, that's the big picture. And let's keep going into creating a Kintone app. So remember, when we're talking about a Kintone app, we're talking about, you can imagine it as like a table in a database or a spreadsheet in an Excel workbook. And there are lots of sort of databases, lots of Kintone apps that you could create. If you're business minded, that might be like an expense report or an invoices app. It could be a sales CRM app. If you just start playing around, you might want to have like a board game database, or a database of local restaurants with different lunches. What we're going to do at this point is walk through how to build an app, and then what's going to happen is I'll turn you loose for you to build the app on your own as an exercise. So this is a reminder, if you have not yet signed up for a developer license, now is the time to do that. The work we will be showing you, if you want to get your hands-on experience, if it's going to require you to have a developer license. If you're having any trouble getting a developer license, please make sure you send a chat message to Genji or Will, and they'll take care of you and make sure you get it properly set up. If you have registered for the developer license and you have not yet checked your mail, please do that. Check your mail. You'll see a subject line. It'll say, "Welcome to Kintone, one more step too." And then you'll be able to activate your subdomain, in other words, your Kintone environment, and set up your initial password. When you log in for the first time, you'll see there are two places that you can drill down into. One is the administration, and the other is the Kintone tool itself. Please go ahead and click on Kintone. And when you do, you'll be taken to the portal. This portal that you're seeing is like a front and center view of all of the things that are important to the users on this platform. You can imagine it as a canvas that's currently blank, and that ultimately could get filled with graphs, charts, views, apps, and other important information. What we're going to do is create our first app, and in order to do that, we will go to the right-hand side of the page in the apps section, right over here. And what you'll see is there is a circle with a plus sign in the middle. You're going to click on that plus sign, and when you do, you'll be taken to a page called the Kintone Marketplace. There are a lot of different ways to create apps. For this purpose, we are going to create an app from scratch. So what you'll do is, in this Kintone Marketplace, you'll click on Create App from Scratch. And once you do, you'll be taken to the app settings of this new app, where you can create this app from scratch using our form builder. The first thing that we're going to do is rename this app, and we're going to call it, instead of new app, we'll call it Board Game DB. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start creating the fields in this app. And creating a field in an app is dead easy. What you'll do is you'll drag a field type from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. The first field you're going to drop is going to be a text field. And you'll drag it to that canvas. And then once you do, hover over it, and you'll see there's a gear wheel on the top right corner of that field. Hover over that gear wheel and you'll click Settings, and then you'll be taken to the field settings. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the name of this field from text to name. Okay, and then we will click Save. So that's our first field. The second field, we're going to drag and drop the drop-down field. So in order to do that, you're going to find the drop-down field. It's going to be right over here, and you'll drag the drop-down field to the middle of the canvas. You're gonna modify the field settings for the drop-down field, and we're gonna make a few changes this time. We're gonna change drop-down to type, and then we're gonna change some of those options. We're gonna change the first one, sample 1, to abstract. The second one, sample 2, to area control. So your field settings will look like that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another option by clicking on that blue plus sign. and click drafting. So overall, it'll end up looking like this. We'll have the name of the field be type, and then we will have 3 options: abstract, area control, and drafting. And at that point in time, we will click save to save the options. Now you might notice in these settings that we have something at the bottom called a field code, okay? The field code is the unique identifier of this field in the back end. And if you're going to be customizing Kintone with JavaScript, it's important to know where those field codes show up and that you can rename them to something that's more, that's clearer. So maybe you might want to rename text to name or drop down to type. This is going to be important for us later in today's session. There will be a time where I will say, hey, do you guys remember field codes? This is where the field code shows up. So I'm just going to flag this for your memory, that there will be a time later where I'll come back to this and we'll talk about this flagged moment. For the meantime, you just know that this is what a field code is. It's a unique identifier for a field, and it has and it shows up when we code stuff on the back end. Once we've saved these field settings, it'll be time for us to activate this app. In other words, to move it into production. So we'll click on the Activate App button in blue. And when you do that, you will be taken to the portal. Now remember, I said this was the beginning of the canvas, and we will begin to populate this canvas. In fact, that's what we just did over here. You'll see Board Game DB in the list of apps, and we're going to click it, and it's going to take us directly into the list view of this board game database. Okay, now I told you that you can imagine an app in Kintone as a table or a worksheet in an Excel workbook, and it might not look like this at the moment because we have no data, but if we filled it with data, it would very much look like the kind of table we were expecting. In the middle of the page, we've got the relevant columns for a particular filtered list, what we call a view. There's a place where you could add new data by clicking on a plus sign. You can access the app settings, which is where we just were creating and modifying this app. And then you could even click on these little blue thumbnails, which will take you into the details of a particular record, including a place where you can have a conversation about that record. Okay, so at this point in time, I want to turn it over to you. Please take, let's give you 10 minutes. We might wrap up a little bit earlier than that. Please take the next 10 minutes and follow these instructions to create your very first Kintone app. If this is not your first time with us, then I invite you to work on an app you already have and just play around and see if you can develop it more, or create some other apps and discover how to connect them using some of our more advanced tools. So we've created our app, our first app, and now let's go ahead and learn how to hook up a data visualization in the app in Kintone. So we're using something called amCharts. And amCharts is a JavaScript library that features charts and maps, and it's got a lot of really neat kind of visualizations for you to use to visualize your data. Now, typically, the way that you work with a library like amCharts is you've got a website and you create a div in the HTML that will be the place where amCharts hooks into. You'll basically summon the libraries with a script tag. You'll define the chart instance and provide details about how it should look, and then you'll also provide data for the chart to read. So on Kintone, this is greatly simplified. You don't need to handle any kind of HTML. The Kintone API provides you with an easy to use method to get the div in the place where you want it to be. You don't have to have your script read any libraries. You can do that from a configurable place in the app settings. You do need to define the chart details, and then the defining of the data is done for you because that's going to be the data that is already in the Kintone apps. So it really simplifies things. And then what you've got is the ability to hook in a really snazzy data visualization inside of Kintone. And that's exactly what we're going to do next using a CSV that's already been scrubbed for you. We're going to create a new app using that CSV file, and then we're going to add JavaScript to the app utilizing the amCharts library, and then we'll do some snazzy data viz stuff. So first, we'll go over the steps, and then we'll hand it over to you to build. Okay. So what are the 4 core steps? 4 core steps are to create a new Kintone app from the CSV file, then add the amCharts libraries, then add the custom JavaScript file to the app, and then we're going to redeploy the app and have our greatness wash over us. So how are we going to create the new Kintone app from a CSV file? Well, first we need a CSV file. Please get it from this site over here, bit.ly/kdp_pict. Make sure that either the text you type in is case sensitive, and then you will download 01_data.csv. Once you've downloaded that CSV file, you're going to create a Kintone app starting in the way that we did before by clicking on a plus sign in the apps segment of the portal. Okay? Once we click on that plus sign, we'll be back into the Kintone marketplace, and this is where things change. We're going to be back in the Kintone marketplace. This is where things change. Things will change here. We are not going to create an app from scratch. We're going to create one from CSV, which is what we've got. The button underneath the one that we used before. And once we do that, we're going to be taken through the CSV wizard. Kintone wants to make sure that you're following all of the right steps to have your data be scrubbed before you import the CSV into Kintone and end up getting errors. So it's going to walk you through some things that you need to make sure are already set up. Now, we've already done the scrubbing for you. So you can just go ahead and hit that check all checkbox, and everything's going to get checked off, and we can proceed to the next page. And that next page, we'll be browsing for that CSV file. Once we do that, we find what we're looking for. Kintone will begin loading it up, and it's going to show you some sample data. Just go ahead and start scrolling down. And you'll see we're going to pass by some tools over here to make sure that the fields that the column in the CSV match with the particular fields that we are expecting in Kintone. That's already done for us. We can hit convert, and that information will be converted. We'll end up right back where we were in the portal, now with 2 apps instead of 1. And this is where we begin our next step of adding the amCharts libraries to the app. So here we are in the portal. We now have 2 apps instead of 1. The first one is now 01_data. So go ahead and click it. And once we click into it, we'll go into that gear wheel where we move into the admin flow for the app settings. And you'll notice there are 4 tabs in the app settings. There's form, views, graphs, and app settings. Please go ahead and click on app settings. And when you do, you'll then be presented with a page that's got 3 columns in it. Second column, second one down, JavaScript and CSS customization. This is where the money's at. This is where we are going. This is where things are happening. go ahead and you'll click on Upload JavaScript for PC. I'm sorry, underneath Upload JavaScript for PC, you're going to click Add Link. You're going to click Add Link 3 times. And you're going to add the following links, which we are about to post in the chat so that you can copy and paste them. Make sure that you post the links in that order. Like so. And then you'll click on that save button that's in line with the link that you just created. You're going to go ahead and do that for the second and third links. And then we'll begin adding the custom JavaScript files to our app. So what we did right now is we added the libraries. Now we're going to add the custom file. Genji, if you could at your convenience, please drop those links in the chat. So okay, let's add our custom JavaScript file. So right now, we've got this file and it lives at this link, bit.ly/kdp_pict. I'm gonna grab it, it's 03_script.js. And this has got our special custom JavaScript. Click save that file. And then what we're gonna do is back in Kintone, we're gonna go where underneath that same place where we're uploading JavaScript for PC, we're going to add a file. We will upload 03_script.js right over here. Make sure that it is in the following order. First is core, then is charts, then is animated, and finally is 03_script. And once we've got all of these files linked to or uploaded, we'll hit the save button on the left-hand side of the page, top left-hand side of the page. And from there, we're going to redeploy the Kintone app by clicking on Update App. This is going to apply the changes that we've made. And from there, we can then go into this app and take a look at this really snazzy data visualization, laying out the different categories of our apps, of our records. All right. I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, okay? Please take the next 10 minutes and jump in and give it a shot. We'll go into the code at this point. Before we continue, I want to make sure we're on the same page with some terminology that you'll see if you start poking around in the code. First, you'll see something called sliced chart. Sliced chart is amCharts' name for the type of chart that we have, which is any kind of chart that displays data categories and slices. Now, we're doing something called a pictorial stacked chart. It's just a type of sliced chart, and it's in the shape of a picture that we give it. You'll also see the word series, which is basically a collection of data points that we're using to display the chart. It's multi-value data, so you can imagine it as like a vector with an n-dimensional vector with n being the number of kinds of data points that it is. If that's too complicated for you, it's not a problem. Just each data point has a bunch of different pieces of data in the data point. By ticks, we mean a short dash that basically connects the slice to its label. And then there's something called mask sprite, which is going to hold the SVG path that the series is going to shape into. And then SVG, scalable vector graphics, this is an XML-based markup language for graphics. What that should mean to you, and this, Mandy, this is going to answer your question from before, which is like, where are we keeping these graphics? So basically on the web, there's two kinds of graphics. There's what we call bitmaps, and then there's what we call vector graphics, okay? A bitmap is basically a file where the file gives instructions to the computer, and it says at coordinate 0, 0, shade this white. At coordinate 0, 1, shade this black. Coordinate 1, 1, shade this white. And literally every single point in that canvas is assigned a color value to in order to display an image. That's one way to handle graphics on any kind of a computer. The second way is with vector images. And a vector image tells the computer, instead of giving it points and colors, it says it's tracing lines. It's saying from point 00 to point 30 draw a line, and then draw another line over here, and draw another line over here. And so instead of getting a point and a color, you get a series of lines that then come together to form a shape. What's really neat about vector images is that they are scalable. So SVG stands for scalable vector graphics. In other words, it's very, very easy to size up a vector image or to size it down with no loss in quality of the image. Whereas if you may already be familiar with, if you take a picture of someone and you zoom in on the photo, it blurs out the image, or if you zoom out, it also distorts the image. So bitmaps are good with particular ranges of expansion and contraction. Mandy's saying that SVG graphics are infinitely scalable, but they're painful to implement in Internet Explorer, though. Mandy, I can tell you've been around if you've been burnt by IE. You've clearly earned your stripes somewhere. And then the legend is the color-coded compilation of the slices categories. We're going to display to you exactly what that means. And here's what we mean. Okay, so there's the legend, and these are the slices and the ticks, so you can see what that looks like visually. And then there are portions of this image that are governed by specific parts of our code, by series.labels.template, which will template out which will give us instructions for showing the ticks and the labels. And then there's series.maskSprite, which gives us instructions on how to display the colors and the masks that relate to portions of the total image that we've created via SVG. Okay. Now, what about all of these different files and links that you uploaded or linked to from the configuration part of the app settings? Well, the first one is the core library that's needed for all amCharts. And then the second one is the amCharts library for creating charts. And the third one has a theme called animated, which is going to make our graphs look pretty snazzy and provide smooth transitions. That fourth one, that's the custom code that we're going to look at soon. Okay, now the code that we created is going to do three main things. First is it's going to define the SVG paths. When I say paths, I want you to think about what we were just talking about when we said, there are lines that get assigned, and we want to make, and we have this collection of vectors, right, of lines that go in a certain direction and then ultimately close around and form shape. And what we've done is we've saved them as variables at the bottom of the code, and we need to define them somewhere. We're also going to create the chart and specify the properties the chart will have. And then also we're adding buttons to iterate through this array of different SVG images. And we're going to show you various different charts that you can create. So if you drill down, you open up the 03 underscore script.js file. This is the custom file that we asked you to download. And you can view this on GitHub, or we recommend if you have like a code editor, like Visual Studio Code, for example, that you open it up over there. It'll be easier to follow along if you do that. And this is going to be the first thing that you see. First of all, this whole JavaScript file lives inside of an immediately invoked function expression. And what that means is that that's this portion over here that says function. There's a parentheses over here. If we go all the way to the bottom of the code, we'll see that this function will close. There'll be another parentheses, and then there'll be another open and close parentheses that indicates that this function is run immediately. Now, we're using something called a Kintone event, and if you've ever coded something for the web, you know that you want your code to trigger on certain things happening. Now, typically in a web environment, those things might be like the DOM is loaded, or the certain aspects of the page are ready to execute. With Kintone lets you hook into certain events that are more reliable than what is the status of a page and its loading. This particular event that we're hooking into is called app.record.index.show. In other words, when we go to the list view, remember the list view is what looks like when all of your records are in like a table. In that view, remember like a table in a database or like a worksheet of an Excel document. That's the list view. So on the list view, do the following. So first is we're going to get a div, the div at the top of the page, and what's called the header element. And Kintone already has a method for getting the header element. We're going to get it, we're going to assign it to a variable, space div, and then we're going to start giving it a bunch of properties, like the size and the height and the border color. Okay, and actually you can see in the corner over here, this is the header space element that we're getting right over here. Then we're going to create the chart instance. We're going to use the animated theme. We're going to create this chart. And what we're going to do first is we're going to get rid of all existing charts. And then we're going to create a chart. We're going to hook into the space div, and we're going to create a sliced chart. We're passing, so again, there's this function called create, this method of this core object. This we're going to pass in two parameters. One is the HTML div that we're going to be hooking into, and then it's the chart that we're going to create over there. That's called the chart variable. From there, let me just kind of contextualize what's happening with our data. Okay, so our data lives in this Kintone record, and we can see it visually. Behind the scenes, this data lives as a type of object called a JSON object. That stands for JavaScript Object Notation. If you're familiar with coding in JavaScript, you'll notice that the notation for holding this data is exactly the same as the notation for a JavaScript object. Hence, JavaScript Object Notation, JSON. And then ultimately, this data gets piped into this chart to produce this beautiful visualization over here. So how do we do that? Okay, well, first, we need to traverse our data, okay? And then we need some kind of a function that's going to take this collection of data and do something with it that's going to get us this snazzy visualization. Well, what is this snazzy visualization? What this is we've collected all of the records and then we've put them into buckets. So we're going to go one by one, record to record. We're saying, okay, this record is going to go in the Java category. This record is going to go in the HTML category. This record is going to go in the Java category. This record is going to go in the Python category. So we're divvying it up, right? But the trick is we need to start from nothing. So that's what this function does. We're using a reduce function over here. This is if you ever want to learn JavaScript, I highly recommend you get comfortable with the map function and the reduce function because they are super useful. What this reduce function is telling us is say, okay, go through all of my data. And one by one, as we go through each of the data, I want you to put them into buckets. First, I want you to figure out if we already have the right bucket for this piece of data that we're holding. If we don't have the right data, then create a bucket just for this new piece of data, and then put the data in that bucket. And then we'll move on to the next piece of data, and we'll say, okay, do we have a bucket for this? If no, then create a new category. If yes, then dump it in the existing category. So we're going to go, okay, first piece of data, JavaScript or Java. Do we have a Java bucket yet? No, great. Create a new Java bucket and put this piece of data in there. Next, oh, this is also Java. Do we have a bucket for Java? Yes, we do. Great. We're going to increment the Java bucket by 1. Next piece of data, C++. Do we have a C++ category? No, put it in there. And then one by one we go until we've got a collection of our data categorized by the type of programming language that we're, that we've segmented them into. So that's what you're seeing over here. We're going to go bucket by bucket. And so first we check to see, okay, do we have a bucket? Do we have a category for this existing piece of data? Do we? Okay, yes, great. Well, if we do, then we're going to increment that bucket by 1. And if we don't, then we're going to create a new bucket with the new name. Now, there was a portion of our time earlier today when I said flag this item, field codes. They're going to be important for later. And here is where they are important. You'll notice that says there's something called current.dropdown0.value. Let me break this down. So the accumulator that we have over here, this is like this is the bucket collection that we are adding to as we traverse our data. We move from one current piece of data to another current piece of data to another current piece of data, and we keep putting things that are current into our accumulator, then into our accumulator, then into our accumulator. So here we are in the current piece of data, and what we're doing is we're checking the value of dropdown 0. Now, dropdown 0 is actually a field code for some field. In this case, it's the name of the coding language. Okay? So if we have that value already in the accumulator, then return true. Otherwise, return false. And then, if it's true, we're going to add to the value. We're going to add to the. We're going to increment the value by 1. If it's false, we're going to create a new object in the accumulator. That's going to be an object with 2 properties: name, which is the name of the coding language, the name of the current coding language, and then value, which is going to start with 1, and then we will continue to increment by 1. And then what happens is with the reduce function, we pass the accumulator in again and again and again and again until we finish traversing the array or the data. All of this is going to be collected into a variable called kdata, and this is what we pipe into the data in the chart. I understand if this was a bit of a wild ride, so I want to just pause for a moment and take questions, because this is a particularly sophisticated example of the reduce function being used in JavaScript. It's quite clever, and it also can open up a lot of questions about how this works. So I'd like to just give everybody the opportunity to make sure we're all square about how this works. I'll just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question, or I'll wait a few seconds in the chat if you want to drop anything over here. And Will is summarizing it very, very well. It's an algorithm to create a specific JSON object that you feed into amCharts to create this chart. That's right. That's absolutely right.
I think we wrote the code so that if you run it on Kintone, and if you open up the developer console, we've console logged what the object notation looks like. So if you're interested in what sort of shape it is, please look through the developer console.
Great. Yeah, that's a great idea, Will. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm not seeing any questions over here, so let's continue. And I mentioned this is the field codes. This is where they show up. They'll show up in your code as a way to reference the particular field, and then its type or its value, or so on. Okay, so we've got the data set up, and now we want to create the series for the chart. So we are selecting a pictorial stacked series, and it's going to look for the name of the category and the number of items that are in this category, name and value respectively, which we just formed when we ran the reduce function across that array. And now we're going to set up the labels, the ticks, the legend, the SVG. So that's what's happening over here. We are putting labels next to the slices. We are documenting kind of how the ticks are going to connect with the labels and what they're going to look like. Where is the legend going to be positioned? These are a lot of just like these are configurations for the chart. And then we also have this one little extra piece over here, which was we can set up a feature to export the chart, which you can download it as an image. And then we also created some extra stuff, some functionality with these buttons over here. What we're doing is we're hooking into the header element, and we are creating these buttons that'll enable us to basically switch through an array of different kinds of charts that we see, different kinds of graphs to change the chart graphic. And then, like I said, we hook it into the header space element. Now, if you're wondering what the SVG paths look like, basically look like this. They're very, there's a list of coordinates that get drawn that tell you the shape of the particular object that you're going to be creating. All right, we've understood the big picture of data analytics, the mission behind data analytics, how Kintone fits in that mission, how to create a Kintone app, how to create a data visualization in Kintone. So far, so good, but there's one missing piece over here to really complete really get it from soup to nuts. And that's to be able to call REST APIs from Kintone. And this is why you need this extra piece. Because in many cases, you won't have a CSV available to upload. You might have data be available in real time from some other third-party tool, and you want to pipe that information into Kintone. And you'll need to know how to use Kintone's REST APIs if you're going to be the one to complete this kind of soup to nuts implementation. So we're talking about data. Wouldn't it be great if we could just get some data from a public API? And in fact, that's what we're going to do. So typically, when programs on the internet make REST API calls, they do so from server to server. So basically, there I am on my client machine working on Safari or heaven forbid Internet Explorer, and I type a bunch of stuff on my client machine. I say, hey, get me something or post something over there. And so I interact with the server. There might be reasons for that server to interact with some other server. And that typically works very well, but a problem arises if I am on one address and I'm beginning to ask for information from another address while I'm on the same address. Let me be a little bit more specific. So imagine that I'm on google.com and I want to call a famous comic website, xkcd.com, from there. I'm not allowed to do that for security reasons. I will run into something called a CORS error, cross-origin resource sharing. And what that does is it prevents me from being on one website and interacting with another website from my client machine. Okay. Now, this is the situation that I'll encounter if I'm on Kintone, right? If Kintone's going to act as a server for me, and I'm going to have it access some public API somewhere else from my client machine, I'm going to run into trouble if I am making the API call to another API while I'm on Kintone. It's not going to work. I'm going to run into errors. I'm going to run into this CORS error. So what Kintone does to allow me to reach some public API and call it on demand is it acts as a proxy server. Kintone basically says, listen, we know you're a client machine. We know you're going to run into CORS errors. Just tell us what the API call is that you want to make. We'll do it for you. We will field the request. We will field the response. And then we'll show up for you however you program it, however you program us to do whatever you want to do. So this kind of proxy server is available as a method on our API called Kintone.proxy. It's going to call REST APIs from your client-side JavaScript without running into any CORS errors. Okay, and the function looks like this. The method looks like this. It's Kintone.proxy, and it's got several parameters. The first one is going to be the API endpoint. So this is a URL. Then you're going to declare the HTTP method. Then any request headers that you need, for example, if you needed to get any kind of authorization, and then the body of the request. And then if you're going to use this function as a callback, you've got these last two parameters. If you ignore those two parameters, this proxy method will return a promise object. Okay, so let's show you an example. Here we've got the proxy, Kintone.proxy, that's executing on the right-hand side, and the code behind it is on the left. So what we're doing is, there we are in Kintone, we're reaching over to xkcd, and we are getting a specific comic. And this is the Bobby Tables comic. It is arguably one of the finest comics to have ever come out of xkcd. So why is this beneficial? So first of all, it's beneficial because you're going to actually be able to make the calls from your browser without running into CORS errors. And this is compatible. You can use this for any browsers that Kintone is compatible with, which includes Internet Explorer. And then also, Kintone.proxy is going to return a promise object, which in my opinion is a more convenient way of working with asynchronous programming than callbacks. So a lot of cool benefits by using this Kintone.proxy method. Let's summarize. Big picture. Kintone, it's a no-code, low-code cloud platform. It's useful for data analytics because it's kind of fielding that last mile. You did all the hard work. You got all these snazzy graphs and charts. You've got all your data insights. You want to turn them into actionable information. And then you hit an internal organizational wall with a lot of friction. Kintone will help you get the crud out of the way, enable people to collaborate more effectively. You can use your free Kintone developer license for any kind of projects that you want. Then we created a Kintone database. We talked about how you can create an app. It's like a table in a database, or like a worksheet in a workbook. You can do that with no coding. You can customize any Kintone app with JavaScript. And then we did that. We customized some Kintone apps with JavaScript by running the amCharts library and creating our own custom code, running our custom code on this Kintone app. And then we talked about how to pipe in data, from other APIs in third-party locations, and how you can do that bypassing CORS errors. Why do you want to use Kintone for your project? So it's quick. There's no need to set up or maintain a server. You can easily create databases with a GUI. Your front end JavaScript can utilize this database data. In fact, a lot of your front end JavaScript might be handled by just leaning on the Kintone GUI. And then you can call your REST APIs from the front end and avoid CORS errors. So this makes life a whole lot simpler than building a project from scratch. There's a lot of scaffolding that you can use. So since we're talking about projects, what are some cool projects to work on next? Well, first you may want to try some more visualization projects. There's tons of cool graphs and charts you can use on amCharts. Lots of libraries. You can definitely reuse the code in this workshop. You may want to play around with some other APIs. So you can find a list of APIs from the link below. And here are some ideas for some projects to work on next. You can use Kintone as a backend. You can also hook Node.js into Kintone REST APIs. You can use Node to call these REST APIs. There's an example below using Heroku. And then here are some places where you can interact to get some assistance. First of all, if you're stuck, you can share your code in the Kintone developer community forum. You're now all members of the Kintone developer community. You can also post on Stack Overflow. And we want to share with you some upcoming announcements. So first of all, we've got some really neat 48-hour hackathons that are coming up. There's Hacking for Fun with sillyhacks.online. And then there's also a NASA Space Apps Challenge that we also invite you to try out. Both hackathons are free, they're online, and they're sponsored by Kintone.
So we want to thank our community partners. So General Assembly, they have been sharing our event with their community. So we just want to give a shout out to them. And then we do have another workshop coming up. So please attend the next one. We have Build a Bar Chart Race Data Project on Tuesday, September 29th. This will be held on 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time. So to join that event, please use that bit.ly right there, KDP_events.